Office ministers should affect their joint credibility and insurgent versus Theresa May's offered Brexit transactions, former Merit Secretariat David Davis has told. The PM has offered a interim customs officer location for the entire UK to stay in the Customs Officer Association time the Irish boundary question is solved. Brexiters' suspicion that could rotate in a constant position, restrictive the liberty to hit trading deals. The is one of the largest basic decisions how by the government has undertaken in contemporary times, he added. The paper comes front of a key summit conference in EU leaders in Brussels on environment that will define if or not a transactions can be affected. Mr. Davis, obedient of his position in July, days following Mrs. May's as-called Chequers transactions was coordinated by office, proverb he did not trust in the schedule. He was quickly accompanied out of by the government by the later Foreign Secretariat Boris Johnson, who declared the PM was guideline the UK in a semi-Brexit in the Statute of a Settlement. The couple been vocal opponents of Mrs. May's line with back to the backbenches. The question of the boundary among Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, that will be the UK's boundary in the EU, is one of the recent left existing barriers to reaching a divorce rate transactions in Brussels. Wrangling is ongoing above the environment of a supporting to hold the boundary outdoor if a broad UK-EU trading location cannot solve it. The EU's release, that would see fair Northern Ireland stay verified in Brussels rules, has been named inappropriate by Mrs. May and the duplicate. Mr. Davis told the government's negotiations policy had basic flaws, occurring of the foolish judgment in December to take the EU's tongue on behaviour in the Northern Ireland boundary. Talks extended the weekend among the UK and the EU front of environments meet. The document told it had seen a leaked memorandum of EU negotiators to EU ambassadors indicating, transactions done. Mrs. Encourage told Mrs. May should not behind a schedule how would efficaciously cut Northern Ireland downstream. Coordinated by the office in July 2018, it includes a overall rule book for all consumer goods sold in the EU and a lightweight customs officer location that urged to support frictionless trading in consumer goods among the UK and the EU time enabling Britain to evolve and freelance trading politics in the otherwise of the planet. The schedule would end complementary motion of human beings. At the start of the summer, the government's elder ministers detained a date-long meet on Brexit at Chequers, the main secretary's formal nation household in Buckinghamshire. The aim was to accept which the government requested of talks in the EU on the next relation among the UK and the EU above Brexit. The schedule how founded of the meet has been named as the Chequers schedule, or occasionally just Chequers. The key aim of the schedule is to build a complementary trade region for consumer goods driving among the EU and the UK time break liberty of motion for human beings among them. To do the UK would perpetrate to collecting importing taxes, named as tariff, on name of the EU for consumer goods how come in the UK on their way to the EU. Meantime, consumer goods how were stay in the UK could be loaded at a various bet, depending on any next trading deals the UK agrees in some countries. The UK would as well accept to a overall guideline volume in the EU for made consumer goods and meal, that would indicate next EU rules and standards. In the next, if the EU modified any of its standards, the UK could solve not to pursue such changes but at the hazard of loser the complementary trading treaty for such consumer goods. The government believes the conjunction of the overall guideline volume and collecting tariff for the EU would escape the requirement for checks on consumer goods fleeting among the UK and the EU, consisting above the Irish boundary. Yet, the EU doesn't take all proposals in the Chequers schedule. It thinks the proposals sum to series-picking components of EU affiliation, in some speech, compliance the bits the UK wants to remain assigned to, time rejection some rules. The EU is as well unconvinced the UK would be capable to exactly path all the consumer goods driving via it. More than rather than 3/4 of NHS trusts, yet, done no preparations for the UK's leaving of the EU onto liberty of data derived by the human beings' voice campaigning. The team as well authorised a YouGov survey of the UK's doctors and medical staff, who, on to the survey, now behind L's plebiscite by a profit of 3 to a.